No response, my queen. No shields. No fleet. Nothing at all.
Then this ends quickly. Signal the surrender terms.
My name is Milo Sanders, and on the day humanity accidentally folded an alien invasion fleet into a shape best described as modern art, my biggest concern was that Node 12 hadn't been serviced since the Clinton administration, and my supervisor still wanted the paperwork by 5. I should mention up front that I did not know about the invasion fleet. Nobody tells the utility guy anything. I found out about most of it later from the news, same as everyone else. That morning started normal. My phone buzzed at 6:40 with a maintenance ticket. Substation 12. Regional spatial buffer, status, degraded, priority, low. Low priority, notice. Nobody at the utility company had called it anything but the buffer for as long as anyone could remember, and nobody remembered what it actually did. There was a laminated card taped to the console that said "Do not decommission legacy infrastructure," which in my line of work usually means some contractor 30 years ago didn't want to fill out the decommission form, so I filed it under Tuesday and got dressed. I noticed the sky looked a little strange on my drive-in, sort of a shimmer like heat coming off asphalt, except it was April and 52 degrees. I noticed a couple of news vans parked outside the Fultondale Water Tower. I noticed my neighbor Greg standing in his driveway in his bathrobe, pointing his phone straight up at the sky and saying words I won't repeat in front of my mother. I noted all of this, filed it under not my department, and kept driving because I had a 9 o'clock and traffic on Route 9 waits for no man, alien armada, or otherwise. Here is what I did not notice. The sky above Fultondale and every other city on the planet currently had 11,000 warships in it, arranged in the kind of tidy geometric ring that only a civilization with both faster-than-light travel and a deep, unshakable love of formation flying could produce. I did not notice this because I do not look up. Nobody who has ever had to find parking in downtown Fultondale looks up. We look at curbs. On the radio, a very calm host was interviewing a very panicked astrophysicist about unprecedented mass in low orbit. I changed the station because the classic rock one was playing a song I liked, and because in 11 years of municipal utility work, I have developed a professional immunity to the phrase unprecedented. Every phrase sounds unprecedented if you've never had to fix the thing it's describing before lunch. By the time I parked, half the office lot was standing outside staring straight up instead of going in, phones raised, a couple of people crying in a specific way that suggested they'd already made their peace with something. Debbie from Accounts Payable asked if I'd seen it. I told her I'd seen worse in the Node 12 sub-basement, which is true, though not remotely the same category of problem, a fact I would only appreciate later. Aboard the flagship of the 9th Threnody Armada, things were going somewhat differently. "Still no response, my queen," said Grand Marshal Kestforn yet again, to a woman who did not enjoy repeating herself and enjoyed even less being repeated to. Queen Yssa Vekh IX had crossed 400 light-years, conquered 6 systems, and personally accepted the tearful surrender of 2 separate empires. She had a throne that hovered. She had a voice like a cello played underwater. She did not expect Earth's failure to respond to be interesting, and it was starting, very slightly, to annoy her. No response from their fleet, Vorn reported. No response from their orbital defense grid. No response from their government, though we have identified something called customer service hold music being broadcast on several frequencies. And their weapons? Unclear, my queen. Scans show low-level energy fluctuations from a structure beneath a city called Fultondale. Designation unknown. It is not powering up. Vorn checked the readout twice because the readout was being unhelpful. It appears to be idling. The queen considered this. In her experience, primitive species either panicked or postured, loudly, in whichever order flattered them most. This species appeared to be doing neither. This species appeared to be doing paperwork. "Signal the surrender terms," she said. Let us conclude this before their midday meal. I want to be clear that at no point during any of this did anyone from the Threnody Armada attempt to contact me directly, which honestly tracks, because my badge only opens Substation 12, the parking gate and the break room fridge, and only the fridge on days that end in a vowel. I got to Node 12 around 9:15, let myself into the sub-basement, and found the buffer exactly where it always was, a squat gray box the size of a dishwasher, humming faintly, connected to absolutely nothing labeled in any language I recognized, in a room that smelled like a library nobody had opened since 1974. The manual, an actual 3-ring binder, because the last update predated the department having a shared drive, said the fix for degraded status was the same fix for everything in my job. Power cycle it. Turn it off.
Count to 30. Turn it back on.
I want to acknowledge that this is, on paper, an insultingly simple way to interact with a piece of infrastructure nobody understands. I want to further acknowledge that it works about 90% of the time, and I had a 9:40 appointment with the HVAC guys after this, so I was not in the mood to get creative. I flipped the switch. Somewhere above Fultondale, 11,000 Threnody warships experienced what their own sensor logs would later describe, with admirable restraint, as an unscheduled topological event. What actually happened, as best I understand it now, months later, after several extremely apologetic government briefings, is this: the buffer was not degraded. The buffer was old. It had been built sometime around the Cold War, quietly, by people who are all dead now, as a planetary contingency system nobody expected to ever actually need, folding local space the way you'd fold a fitted sheet into a shoebox, badly but functionally and permanently, unless someone with a badge and a 3-ring binder happened to turn it off and back on again at exactly the wrong moment for 11,000 ships currently occupying the airspace it was quietly folding. Which I did. At 9:22. Aboard the flagship, Grand Marshal Vorn had approximately 6 seconds to register that the tidy geometric ring of the 9th Threnody Armada had stopped being a ring, a geometry, or in several unfortunate cases, a single contiguous object, before every alarm on the bridge went off at once, in several octaves, none of them dignified. "Report," the Queen said, gripping her hovering throne as it very abruptly stopped hovering in a straight line. "The fleet, my Queen, the fleet is." Vorn looked at the tactical display, which no longer resembled a tactical display so much as a plate of extremely expensive noodles. "Folded, my Queen. The fleet appears to be folded." 2 destroyers had been compressed into the approximate shape and volume of a dinner roll. A cruiser named for a beloved royal ancestor now existed primarily inside a different cruiser, the 2 vessels having achieved a kind of structural intimacy neither crew had consented to and both would spend years in therapy discussing. The Queen's own flagship, largest and mightiest of the Armada, had been elegantly, almost respectfully, folded in half and deposited nose first into the Pacific Ocean, where a fishing trawler out of Half Moon Bay reported, with commendable understatement, that they'd snagged something metal. Down in the sub-basement, none of this reached me, because Node 12 does not get cell signal, and the buffer room's one working radio only picks up the classic rock station. I closed the panel, filled out the service ticket, repaired, power-cycled PR's standard procedure, and drove to my 9:40 with the HVAC guys, who spent half an hour complaining about a thermostat while, 2 miles overhead, what remained of an alien battle fleet drifted through the sky in shapes better suited to a museum of modern sculpture than an interstellar war. I found out about the invasion and my small role in ending it that evening from my mother, who called to ask if I'd seen the thing on the news about the aliens, and then, almost as an afterthought, whether I'd finished the buffer ticket, because apparently my supervisor had already fielded several calls from some very serious-sounding government people, asking who had serviced Substation 12 that morning. I want to say I handled the ensuing debrief with dignity. I did not. I sat in a windowless room while 5 generals, 2 department heads, and a woman who would not confirm which agency she worked for asked me to explain, in my own words, how I had single-handedly defeated an 11,000-ship invasion fleet. I told them the truth. I turned it off, I counted to 30, and I turned it back on. Nobody found this a satisfying answer. I understand. It was not a satisfying answer, It was, however, the correct one, and I said so, twice, to increasingly quiet applause. By the following morning, someone had leaked enough of the debrief that the internet had already settled on calling the whole event the dinner roll incident, which I resent slightly, mostly because nobody asked my opinion on the branding. There is now a plush toy. I have not bought one, though my mother has bought several. They asked if I could do it again. I told them I could, provided Node 12 filed another degraded status ticket, which it has not because as far as the buffer is concerned, everything is currently fine. Queen Yssa Vekh IX surrendered what remained of the 9th Threnody Armada 7 hours later. Via a transmission, the SETI people are still arguing over how to properly translate, but which general consensus renders roughly as, "We withdraw. We do not know what this world's weapon is. We do not wish to learn. We wish, additionally, never to discuss the dinner roll." I did not get a medal. I did not get a parade. I did get, 6 days later, a formal written warning from my supervisor for submitting the Node 12 service ticket 8 minutes past the end of shift deadline, which he informed me, without a hint of irony, reflects poorly on the department, regardless of extenuating circumstances. I have since been promoted to Senior Regional Buffer Technician, a title that did not exist before this, comes with no raise, and arrived with a new laminated badge that reads, in small print along the bottom, "Please do not power cycle without supervisor approval," which feels, at this particular point in human history, like closing the barn door after 11,000 horses have already been folded, gently and irreversibly, into the shape of a barn. Greg from next door still asks me about it sometimes, out on the driveway, bathrobe and all. I tell him the same thing I told the generals. I turned it off. I counted to 30. I turn it back on. He never finds that satisfying either. I've made my peace with that.